topic is writing inequalities to represent situations. The essential question is, what are some steps that can help you write an inequality to represent a situation or statement? So I've provided a list of steps to follow when you write inequalities, and this should hopefully help you when you're given story problems that involve inequalities, okay? So the first thing that you always want to do is you want to identify and define the variable. So similar to what we did when you were solving story problems with equations, you want to list a variable and define what it means in the context of the problem. So something that's kind of helpful is looking for that sentence or question mark sentence that kind of asks you what it's looking for. And typically, in most cases, that's going to be what your variable will represent, okay? After that, I would recommend circling and underlining keywords and phrases. So for inequalities, these are some keywords and phrases that would help you think of using this symbol right here. So if you see something that says less than in the wording, if in the wording in your story problem it says fewer than, or if in the wording it says smaller than. And of course, there's more phrases that could be added to this list. So as you read your story problems, these aren't the only 3. So if you're like, oh, they don't say any of these words on here, it must not be an inequality problem. You got to kind of use your brain and kind of think about, well, okay, are we comparing things? Could there be more than one answer? And those should be the big hints that remind you and let you know that, hey, this is an inequality question, okay? Here's just a couple of key phrases that would help you think of greater than, of using this symbol. Greater than, larger than, bigger than, more than, exceeds, here are some phrases that will help you know to use less than or equal to. So if it literally says less than or equal to, then that's probably the symbol to use. If it says is no more than, or if it says is at most, okay, then you want to use that symbol. All right, now to use the symbol greater than or equal to, here are just a couple of phrases. If they say greater than or equal to, then probably use that symbol. If it says is no less than, or if it says is at least. Okay? So you want to circle and underline keywords and phrases that would help you recognize which symbol to use. After that, you want to turn those keywords and phrases into an inequality problem. So comparing it to when you had story problems with equations, you just kind of built your equation around your variable. You want to do that here too. You want to build your inequality around your variable. Okay, the variable from up there. Then after that, you got to solve that inequality. So get that variable alone. Remember, if you ever have to multiply or divide by a negative, you want to reverse the sign at the very, very end. After that, you're going to graph your solutions on a number line. Okay? All right, so for your summary, I want you just to answer this question. Which inequality symbols require you to fill in the circle when you graph its solutions? So when you go to graph your solutions on the number line, which are the ones that you have to fill in, okay? Which symbols? Please flip it over. All right, so we're going to be practicing solving these inequality statements. And again, don't forget to graph your solutions. So the sum of 3 times the number and negative 4 is greater than 17. So what you got to do, your first step, is you need to define that variable. So I'm going to use all these ones, they don't really have a question mark, but something that they have in common is that we're supposed to be figuring out what those numbers could be, okay? So the sum of 3 times the number and negative 4 is at most 17. The sum of 3 times the number and negative 4 is less than 17. The sum of 3 times the number and negative 4 is at least 17. So these are all very similar, and we got to find those possible numbers. So instead of having to define the variable every single time, since for these particular notes they're all very, very similar, where we have to find out what those numbers could be, I'm just going to go ahead and define the variable right now just ahead of time to represent all of them, if that makes any sense, okay? So right up here I'm going to say x is going to represent the unknown number for all these problems. On this page. So that way I don't have to keep defining it. But you know, if they're different kind of story problems where they have different contexts of what's going on in them, then yeah, you gotta define your variable, okay? But these are all very similar. I remember when I wrote this, okay? All right, so let's go ahead and get started. The sum of 3 times the number and negative 4 is greater than 17. So you wanna circle and underline keywords and phrases. So sum, it sounds like I have to add 3 times the number and negative 4, and that's gonna be greater than 17. Okay, so let's go ahead and build around our variable. So there's that number. The sum of 3 times the number, so 3 times the number, here's the number, here's 3 times it. And the sum means I have to add to it a negative 4. Okay, so that's what it looks like. But what you should hopefully know by now is that when you're adding a negative to it, you're going to be going to the left on the number line. So what I can really do, so I don't get myself confused, is I could just literally go like this. We're adding a negative 4. So that's the same exact thing as what we just wrote. 3x plus a negative 4 is the same as 3x minus 4, okay? And it says it's going to be greater than 17. So I know I'm comparing it to 17. So something that kind of has helped me is I think of, okay, this expression right here, it's got to be greater, this has to be greater than 17. It has to be greater than 17, okay? So what we're going to do right there is we're going to go ahead and make that greater than 17, okay? So now from here we're going to go ahead and build it. So we started with the variable of x, and then after that we're going to multiply it by 3, and then after that we're going to subtract 4, okay? So now to go ahead and solve this, you need to add 4 to both sides of that inequality sign. Negative 4 plus 4 is 0. 17 plus 4 is 21. And bring down your inequality sign. Now the inverse operation of timesing by 3 is to divide by 3, so you can do that to both sides of that inequality. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 1 times x is 1x, or x, and I'm going to go ahead and write that over here because I ran out of room. And do not reverse the sign. Do not reverse that inequality sign. Do not flip it, because we did not multiply or divide by a negative, so it stays the same, so it's going to look like that. 21 divided by 3 is 7. So that's one way I can write it, or the other way I can write it is writing that 7 first, and then that x next, okay? So you'll notice that x is greater than 7, and what we have right here is x is greater than 7. Okay, so that's what it looks like. Sorry about the interruptions. Okay, so when we graph it, you gotta graph it next, and you wanna make sure you put that 7 on the number line. You wanna put that 8 right there. You wanna put that 6 right there. And then x is greater than 7, so that cannot include 7 in the answers. X is bigger than it, so numbers bigger than 7 are like 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and those lie to the right. Okay? Okay, the next one. And remember, please pause the video as you go through this so that you can get some practice in. So the sum of 3 times the number and negative 4 is at most 17. So again, we were using the variable of x to represent that unknown number. So I'm going to build around it. But it says the sum of 3 times the number, so I have 3 times the number and negative 4 is at most 17. Okay, so I have my variable. I'm going to build around it. Sum of 3 times the number. There's 3 times the number. I'm going to add to it that -4. So again, I can write plus a -4, or if that gets confusing for you, you can just write -4. Okay? Okay, and at most it's going to be 17. So before I do the inequality symbol right there, I'm going to think about this, okay? Right there. It's going to be, the most this can be is 17. So this is at most 17. The most, and I just write little notes right here to help you recognize which inequality to use, because that's what, you're not going to really have, I'm not going to tell you which one to use on a quiz or an assessment. Sorry. The most this could be is 17, okay? So the most that could be is 17. So the very most it could be is 17, so that's why we have, that right there, because I know it could equal 17, but the most it could be is 17. That means it can't be bigger than 17. No way, so it's got to go this way. Okay? All right, now let's go ahead and build it and solve the inequality. So we started with x, multiplied it by 3, and then we subtracted 4. Okay? So the inverse operation of subtracting 4 is to add 4. And you do that to both sides of that inequality. -4 plus 4 is 0. 17 plus 4 is 21. Bring down your inequality and bring down your 3 times x. And then the inverse operation of timesing by 3 is to divide by 3. So you're going to divide both sides by 3. Okay, 3 divided by 3 is 1. 1 times x is x, and I have to write it right over here. And 21 divided by 3 is 7. And we're going to keep that same inequality how it is, because we did not multiply or divide by a negative. So that's one way to write it, or you can write that 7 first, that x next. And then notice that the x is smaller than or equal to 7. So that means the 7 is bigger than or equal to x. So now you're going to go ahead and draw your number line. So we have 7, 8, and then a 6 over here. It could equal 7, so I'm going to fill in the circle right there. And then x is smaller than or equal to 7. So numbers smaller than or equal to 7, but smaller than it would be like 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and that's all to the left. Okay? So our next problem, number 3, the sum of 3 times the number and -4 is less than 17. So circle, and we defined our variable already. It's basically asking what numbers could those possibly be. And we're going to circle and underline keywords and phrases. So we got sum, 3 times the number, and -4 is less than 17. So let's go ahead and build around our variable. The sum of 3 times the number, there's my number, there's 3 times it, and I'm going to add to it plus -4, or you can write -4, and comparing it with that 17. So I'm going to write just a little note to myself right here. This has to be less than 17. So this right here, this has to be less than 17. Okay, so this right here, can it equal 17? No, it's got to be less than 17. So it would look like that. Okay, so now let's build it. We start with x, multiply it by 3, then we subtract 4. Okay, inverse operation of subtracting 4 is to add 4. So now you're going to add 4 to both sides of that inequality. -4 plus 4 is 0. 17 plus 4 is 21. Got 3x. Okay, go up here. Times 3, the inverse operation is to divide by 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1. So x is less than, 21 divided by 3 is 7. So x is less than 7. Notice we did not reverse the sign because we did not multiply or divide by a negative. So that's one way we can write it, or we can write the 7 first, that x second. Since x is smaller than 7, 7 would be bigger than x. So now we are going to graph it. So I have 7 right here, 8, 6. That's an open circle because 7 is not included in one of the answers. X is smaller than 7, so numbers smaller than 7 are like 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and that's all to the left, okay? Okay, you should try this one on your own to get your practice in. Sum of 3 times the number and -4 is at least 17. So we already defined the variable right up there. So we're just going to circle and underline keywords and phrases. So sum, I know I have to add something. 3 times the number in -4 is at least 17. So let's go ahead and build around our variable. Okay, 3 times the number, there's my number. And the sum of it, so plus a -4. I'm going to keep that plus a -4 just so you can kind of see it, okay? And all the other ones, I kind of kept it like that because they're all very similar. But notice how it's going to be exactly the same. It's not going to be scary, all right? So now we are comparing it with 17. Okay, so the little note I'm going to write to myself, this right here, it's at least 17. This has to be at least 17. Okay, so if it has to be at least 17, that means, yeah, it can equal 17. So it's got to be at least 17. So could it be 18? Yeah, that's at least 17. Could it be 19? Yeah, that's at least 17. Could it be 2? No, that's not at least 17. So you should know that it goes this way. Okay, now let's go ahead and build it. Start with x, then we multiplied it by 3, then we added a -4. Which you want to look at the sign directly in front of it, so we subtracted 4, okay? So see, when you're building it, you want to look at the sign directly in front of it, okay? All right, so the inverse operation of subtracting 4 is to add 4, so you'll do that to both sides of that inequality. That right there is 0. 17 plus 4 is 21. Keep that inequality right there, bring down your 3 times x, and go back up. The opposite, inverse operation, you know, of timesing by 3 is to divide by 3. You're going to divide by 3 on both sides. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 1 times x is x. And that's going to be greater than or equal to 7 because we did not multiply or divide by negative, so we keep that inequality sign consistent. So the other way to write this is to write that 7 first, the x second. Notice that x is greater than or equal to 7. So 7 is less than or equal to x. Same thing. Okay? Now for your number line, you want to put that 7 in the middle. And it's going to be a closed circle because 7 is one of the possible solutions. Now x is bigger than or equal to 7, so since it could equal 7, it's filled in. Numbers that are bigger than 7 are like 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So see how I'm thinking about those numbers, and then I do this, because it helps you recognize where to go. So I said 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, that's all to the right, okay? All right, for your summary, I know we used up a lot of room, but your question is not that long. Which number from above was most challenging for you? Was number 1, 2, 3, or 4 most challenging? So write down what number you thought was the most challenging. After you do that, I want you, whatever number you wrote down that was most challenging, I want you to reread the problem, re-examine what was written for the inequality, re-examine what I wrote down as a little note to remind you, and make sure you understand that problem that was the most challenging for you. Okay, have a good day. Bye.